His divorced wife saved cold Millionaire from Snowstorm crash. Now he can't stop thinking about her warmth. She wasn't Lana Reed anymore. The nameplate on her EMT uniform read L. Martinez. Why did you save me? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The billionaire's Range Rover was spinning toward death when hands that once loved him pulled him back to life. 5 years of silence shattered in the Montana cold as Lana Carter's voice cut through his consciousness. Stay with me, Clayton. She wasn't supposed to be there, wasn't supposed to care if he lived or died after what he'd done to their marriage. Have you ever wondered if the person you hurt most would still save your life? This story will show you what redemption looks like when it's covered in blood and snow. Death was 3 seconds away when his past came to rescue his future. Have you ever crashed, literally or metaphorically, and needed someone you'd wronged to pull you back up? Clayton Reed thought money could fix everything until the night it couldn't even keep him alive. What would you do if your ex-spouse saved your life? Would you thank them or run? The blizzard hit Highway 2 like God's own fury, turning the Montana landscape into a whiteout hell that swallowed headlights whole. Clayton's knuckles went white on the steering wheel as his Range Rover fishtailed across black ice. The million-dollar machine suddenly as helpless as a paper airplane in a hurricane. He'd been running from New York for 3 days straight, fleeing the wreckage of his divorce, the board meetings where they'd stripped him of his CEO position, the tabloid photos of his ex-wife Victoria celebrating with her new lover. The mountains had called to him like they always did when the world got too small, too suffocating, too full of people who wanted pieces of him he no longer had to give. But now the mountains were trying to kill him. The Range Rover hit the guardrail doing 60, metal screaming against metal as it cartwheeled down the embankment. Time stretched like taffy as Clayton watched the world tumble. White sky, dark trees, white ground, spinning endlessly until the vehicle slammed into a pine tree with a sound like thunder. Blood mixed with snow on the shattered windshield as her flashlight beam found his face. The Montana wind howled like grief itself, but her hands, those same hands that used to trace his jawline in their Manhattan penthouse, worked with steady precision to free him from twisted metal. Clayton? Clayton, can you hear me? That voice, even half-conscious and bleeding, his body recognized it before his mind caught up. The same voice that used to whisper his name in the dark, that had screamed at him during their last fight, that had gone silent the day she walked out of his life forever. Lana. His eyes focused on her face, older now but still beautiful, framed by the hood of a heavy winter coat. Her dark skin glowed against the white snow, and those eyes, Christ, those eyes that used to see straight through to his soul, were wide with concern and something else. Something that looked almost like care. Don't try to move, she said, her EMT training kicking in as she checked his pulse. You've been in an accident. I'm going to get you out of here. The irony wasn't lost on him. 5 years ago, she'd walked away because he couldn't fight for them. Tonight, she was fighting to keep him alive. Her hands moved over his chest, checking for injuries, and his traitorous body responded to her touch despite the pain, despite everything. Memory flooded back, those same hands exploring him in their bed, learning every scar, every sensitive spot, claiming him as hers. Lana, he managed to whisper. She froze, their eyes meeting through the broken glass. For a moment, time stopped again, not from the crash this time, but from the weight of 5 years of silence, of regret, of love that had never really died. Drop an iceberg in the comments if you've ever had someone from your past show up at exactly the right moment. What happened next? Hit that like button if you're ready for a story about second chances that nobody saw coming. As the ambulance doors closed, separating them again, Clayton saw something that stopped his heart more than the crash. A little boy in her truck's passenger seat with his own dark eyes staring back. The hospital room was sterile white, but the tension between them burned red hot with 5 years of unfinished business. Clayton came to slowly, the beeping of machines replacing the howl of wind. His head felt like it had been split with an axe, and his ribs screamed with every breath. But none of that hurt as much as seeing Lana sitting in the visitor's chair, her wedding ring catching the harsh hospital lights. She wasn't Lana Reed anymore. The nameplate on her EMT uniform read L. Martinez. "You're awake," she said, not moving from her chair. Professional distance, like she was just another patient instead of the man who'd once promised her forever. "You married him." It wasn't a question. Carlos Martinez, the local sheriff's deputy who'd been sniffing around her even before their divorce was final. Clayton had seen the photos online, her in a simple white dress, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled in months before she left him. "I built a life, Clayton. A good life." Her voice was steady, but her hands fidgeted with her radio. "You should be grateful you're alive. That crash should have killed you. Why did you save me?" The question hung between them like a loaded gun. She could have driven past. Should have, probably. Let someone else scrape the billionaire off the mountainside. "Because that's who I am, Clayton. That's who I've always been. The question is, why did you let me go?" The words hit him harder than a crash. Because she was right. He'd let her go. Chosen his reputation, his board of directors, his pristine image over fighting for the woman who'd been the only real thing in his manufactured world. Have you ever been in a room with someone you used to love and felt that electricity again? Tell me in the comments. Did you fight it or give in? "The doctors want to keep you overnight for observation," she said, standing to leave. "You have a concussion and 3 cracked ribs. You'll live." But as she reached for the door handle, Clayton's voice stopped her. "I never stopped loving you." She froze, her back still to him. "Don't." 5 years, Lana. 5 years I've been dead inside, going through the motions of a life that doesn't mean anything without you in it. You made your choice. She turned, and he could see tears threatening in her eyes. You chose them. Your board, your image, your precious reputation. You chose everything but me. I was trying to protect you. From what? From love? From being happy? Her voice broke. "I needed you to fight for us, Clayton. I needed you to stand up to them and say, 'She's my wife and I don't care what you think.' But you couldn't do it. You wouldn't." The silence stretched between them, filled with all the words they should have said 5 years ago. Finally, she reached for the door again. "Lana, wait. Some secrets are buried so deep they fossilize, until a 4-year-old boy with your eyes digs them up with one innocent question." The hospital cafeteria buzzed with life, but their corner table existed in its own vacuum of tension. Miguel colored dinosaurs with crayons, while Clayton watched every gesture, every expression, searching for himself in miniature. The boy had Lana's smile, her stubborn chin, but those eyes were pure Reed. Dark, intense, seeing everything. The same eyes that stared back at Clayton from mirrors, from family portraits, from Forbes magazine covers. "He's beautiful," Clayton said softly, not trusting himself to say more. Lana's grip tightened on her coffee cup. "He's mine." I didn't say he wasn't, but they both knew what he was thinking, what he was calculating. Miguel had to be 4, maybe 4.5, which meant, "Mama, why does the hurt man have my nose?" The crayon fell from Lana's frozen fingers as Miguel looked up from his dinosaur coloring book, head tilted with that particular brand of childhood curiosity that cuts straight to the truth adults spend years avoiding. Carlos shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Miguel, finish your coloring." But the boy wasn't done. He studied Clayton with those reed eyes, taking in every detail with the kind of intensity that made grown men uncomfortable in boardrooms. "You have my chin too," Miguel announced, completely oblivious to the bombshell he'd just dropped. "And my hair color. Are we related? What would you do if you discovered your child had been kept secret from you? Or if you had to hide a truth this big? Share your thoughts below." Lana went pale. "Miguel, eat your sandwich." "But Mama..." "Now." The authority in her voice made the boy duck his head, but Clayton could see him still watching, still thinking. Kids were smarter than adults gave them credit for. Especially this kid, apparently. "He talks a lot," Carlos said, clearly trying to fill the silence. "Gets that from his mother." "My son talks a lot," Clayton thought, but didn't say. The possessiveness that swept through him was primal, unexpected. This child, this perfect, innocent child, was his. His blood, his legacy, his future sitting there coloring dinosaurs and asking questions that could destroy everything. I like dinosaurs too, Clayton said carefully. Which one's your favorite? Miguel's face lit up. T-Rex. They're the biggest and strongest, and they protect their families. He held up his coloring page. See? This one's fighting bad guys. The parallel wasn't lost on anyone at the table. Protect their families. Clayton's chest ached with longing so sharp it rivaled his cracked ribs. That's a good drawing, he managed. Thanks. Mama says I'm good at art. She says my real daddy was probably good at art too, but he had to go away. The silence that followed was deafening. Lana looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Carlos looked like he wanted to punch something. And Clayton felt like he'd been hit by another car. Had to go away. Not chose to go away. Had to. Miguel, Lana said carefully, why don't you go get some ice cream from the machine? As Clayton reached to help Miguel with his coloring, their hands touched, and the boy looked up with startling directness. Are you my real daddy? The crayon fell from Lana's frozen fingers, and Carlos's coffee cup shattered on the floor. The truth has a way of melting through the thickest ice and burning down the most carefully built lies. They stood in the hospital parking lot as snow continued to fall, their heated words creating visible clouds between them, while their son played obliviously in the slush nearby. You had my child and didn't tell me? Clayton's voice was raw, disbelieving. You chose your reputation over our marriage, Clayton. I chose survival over your guilt. The words hit like physical blows. Lana wrapped her arms around herself, not from the cold, but from the way he was looking at her, like she'd stolen something precious. I had a right to know. You had a right to fight for us. You didn't. Her breath came out in angry puffs. I was 3 months pregnant when you signed those divorce papers. 3 months carrying your child while you chose your board of directors over your wife. I was protecting you. Stop saying that. Her voice cracked like ice breaking. You were protecting yourself from having to choose, from having to stand up to them, from having to prove that we mattered more than their money. Miguel looked up from building a snowman with hospital parking lot slush, sensing the tension even if he couldn't understand it. Mama, why are you crying? Have you ever had to choose between love and self-preservation? Between truth and peace? Drop a heartbreak if you understand Lana's choice. I'm not crying, baby. Just cold. She wiped her cheeks quickly. Why don't you show Clayton your snowman? The boy beamed, innocent pride radiating from every pore. Look, it's got stick arms and everything. Clayton knelt beside his son, Christ his son, and felt something crack open in his chest. It's perfect, Miguel. You're really good at building things. Mama says I get that from my real daddy too. She says he builds big buildings and important stuff. The casual way Miguel talked about his real daddy, like some mythical figure, destroyed Clayton. All those bedtime stories, all those questions about where he came from, all those Father's Days spent wondering. I could have been there, Clayton said quietly, standing. I could have been there for all of it. His first steps, his first words, his first. You could have been there for our marriage, Lana shot back. But you weren't. When it mattered, when I needed you to fight for us, you folded. I was 28 years old, Lana. I didn't know how. Carlos was 26 when he married me. Didn't stop him from standing up to his entire family when they said I wasn't good enough. Didn't stop him from telling anyone who'd listen that he was proud to call me his wife. The comparison cut deep because it was true. Carlos had done everything Clayton couldn't, or wouldn't. Does he know? Clayton's voice was barely above a whisper. Does Carlos know Miguel isn't his? Lana's silence was answer enough. Jesus, Lerna. You built your entire new life on a lie. I built it on survival. You think it was easy? You think I wanted to raise our son alone while you played billionaire bachelor in the tabloids? When Carlos pulled up in his police cruiser, badge gleaming, and saw Clayton's hands on Lana's shoulders, his radio crackled with a call that made everyone freeze. Domestic disturbance, possible child custody dispute. Someone had been watching. Someone had called it in. In a town of 3,000 people, secrets travel faster than wildfire and burn just as hot. Main Street buzzed with whispered conversations and sideways glances as news of the billionaire's crash spread through Glacier Point like spilled coffee on white linen. Dark, staining, impossible to clean. "That's him," old Mrs. Henderson whispered to her coffee clatch at Millie's diner. "The one that broke our Lana's heart all those years ago. Heard he's claiming the boy," added Tom from the hardware store. "Poor Carlos. Man works his tail off for that family. And now this city slicker shows up thinking his money can buy back what he threw away." But it wasn't just coffee shop gossip anymore. Someone had filmed the parking lot confrontation on their phone. By morning, the video was everywhere. Billionaire Clayton Reed in a heated argument with his ex-wife while a small mixed-race boy played in the snow between them. The comment section was brutal. Rich white boy couldn't handle a black wife. Now he wants his kid back. That poor woman. Finally found happiness, and here comes the sperm donor with his lawyers. Kid looks just like him, though. DNA don't lie. Lana sat in her truck outside Miguel's preschool, engine running, afraid to go inside. She'd built 5 years of respect in this town, earned her place through hard work and dedication. Now she could feel it crumbling with every stare, every whispered conversation that stopped when she walked by. Her phone buzzed. A text from Clayton. "We need to talk. Not about us. About him." She'd been avoiding him for 3 days, refusing his calls, ignoring the flowers he'd sent to the hospital. But Miguel had been asking questions. Hard questions about the man, with his nose, his chin, his eyes. "Have you ever lived in a small town where everyone knows your business? How did you handle the gossip and judgment? Tell me your story." The knock on her truck window made her jump. Clayton stood in the snow, no designer coat this time. Just jeans and a flannel shirt that made him look almost normal. Almost like the man she'd fallen in love with before the money and power changed everything. She rolled down the window. "What do you want?" "I rented the cabin on Elk Lake. The one we used to..." He cleared his throat. "I'm not leaving Montana. Not until we figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out. Miguel has a father. A good father who's been there since he was 6 months old. But he's not his biological father." Clayton's voice was quiet but firm, and Miguel's starting to figure that out on his own. It was true. Just this morning, Miguel had asked why he didn't look like Carlos, why his skin was lighter, why his hair curled differently. Smart questions from a smart boy who was starting to piece together the truth. "I'm not trying to take him away from Carlos," Clayton continued, "but I won't be shut out of my son's life. Not anymore. Your son." Lana's voice rose. "Where were you when he had croup at 2 years old? When he started walking? When he said his first word? Carlos was there. Carlos has been his father. Because you never gave me the chance to be." The knock on her door came at midnight. Not reporters this time, but Clayton himself, soaked from walking through the storm. "I'm not leaving Montana," he said simply. "Not without my son. Not without you." Some conversations can only happen in darkness. When the truth is too raw for daylight and too dangerous for witnesses. Lana stared at Clayton through the crack in her door, water dripping from his hair onto her porch. Carlos was working the night shift, wouldn't be back until dawn. Miguel was asleep upstairs. The smart thing would be to shut the door, pretend she hadn't heard him, let him freeze in the storm he'd walked through to get here. Instead, she stepped aside and let him in. "You're soaked," she said, grabbing a towel from the laundry basket. I walked from the cabin. Needed to think. Her living room glowed with firelight, shadows dancing across family photos that told the story of 5 years without him. Pictures of Miguel's first birthday, his first day of school, Christmas mornings with Carlos playing Santa. A whole life built in his absence. But in the amber light, time folded back on itself, and they were just Lana and Clayton again, before the world tore them apart. "Why are you really here?" she asked, but her voice was softer now, without the anger from the parking lot. "Because I can't sleep, can't eat, can't think about anything except the fact that I have a son who doesn't know me." He ran the towel through his hair, and she had to look away from the familiar gesture. "And because I can't stop thinking about you. Clayton, I know you're married. I know you built a good life with Carlos. I'm not here to mess that up. Then why are you here?" He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne mixed with rain and pine trees. The same combination that used to drive her crazy when they were young and in love and thought forever was a promise they could keep. Because Miguel asked me today if I was his real daddy, and I couldn't lie to him. Because you're the only woman I've ever loved, and I was too scared and too proud to fight for you. Because I've spent 5 years being dead inside, and seeing you again, it's like someone turned the lights back on. Have you ever been in a room with someone you used to love and felt that electricity again? Tell me in the comments. Did you fight it or give in? We can't do this, she whispered, but she didn't step away when he reached up to touch her face. I know, Carlos is a good man. He loves Miguel like his own son. I know, if we cross this line, everything changes. I know, his thumb traced her cheekbone, and she closed her eyes. Tell me to leave, Lana. Tell me to walk back into that storm and never come back. She should. She knew she should. But when she opened her eyes and saw the raw need in his face, the same need that was burning through her own chest, the words wouldn't come. Instead, she pulled him down to her, fingers tangling in his hair as fire crackled beside them. We shouldn't, she whispered against his mouth. We shouldn't, he agreed, even as his hands found the hem of her sweater. Their lovemaking was desperate, hungry, 5 years of longing condensed into stolen moments on the rug where Miguel played with his toys every morning. She pulled him down to her, and he kissed her neck, found that spot that made her gasp, made shouldn't become please don't stop. When it was over, they lay tangled together, listening to the storm rage outside and the dangerous sound of their hearts beating in sync. This was a mistake, she said, but she didn't move away from his warmth. Probably. The sound of Carlos's patrol car in the driveway made them both freeze. She'd lost track of time, forgotten that he sometimes came home early when the roads got bad. Clayton was gone out the back door before Carlos's key turned in the lock, but not before pressing something in her palm, a hotel room key. Tomorrow at noon, he whispered. We finished this conversation. The question wasn't whether she'd go. It was whether she'd come alone. She told herself she was going to end it. But some fires are too hot to extinguish with good intentions. The Glacier Point Inn wasn't much to look at, 12 rooms above the town's only restaurant, the kind of place where truckers stopped and traveling salesmen spent lonely nights. But Room 7 overlooked the frozen lake where she and Clayton used to ice skate as newlyweds visiting his cabin, back when love felt simple and the future stretched ahead like an open road. Now the ice looked fragile, ready to crack under the weight of everything unsaid. Clayton was waiting when she knocked, still wearing yesterday's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept any better than she had. The room smelled like coffee and regret. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I almost didn't. She stayed near the door, escape route mapped in her mind. This has to stop, Clayton. Whatever this is, whatever we're doing, it ends today. Does it? He moved closer, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Because the way you kissed me last night didn't feel like ending. It felt like beginning. I'm married to a man you don't love. The words hung between them like a challenge. She wanted to deny it, to defend Carlos, to list all the reasons why their marriage worked. But in this room, with Clayton looking at her like she was the only woman in the world, the lies felt too heavy to carry. Love isn't just passion, Clayton. It's showing up. It's being there when things get hard. It's choosing someone every day, not just when it's convenient. Is that what you think I did? Chose convenience over you. Didn't you? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the lake. I was 28 and scared. My father had just died, the company was falling apart, and the board was breathing down my neck about everything, including my wife. They said you were a distraction, that our marriage was hurting the stock price, that I needed to choose between Reed Industries and you. What would you do if someone you love made a choice that broke your heart, but claimed it was to protect you? Comment below with your honest answer. So you chose them. I chose what I thought was best for both of us. I thought if I could save the company, prove myself to them, then eventually they'd accept you. Accept us. He turned back to her, and she could see the old pain in his eyes. I didn't know you were pregnant. Would it have changed anything? Everything. God, Lana, everything. The rawness in his voice broke something inside her. She'd spent 5 years hating him for abandoning her, but maybe he'd been just as lost as she was. I need to know, he said quietly. Is Miguel mine? She'd been dreading this moment, this question that would change everything. But sitting in this shabby hotel room with the man she'd never stopped loving, the truth felt like the only thing left worth saving. Yes. The word dropped between them like a stone into still water, sending ripples through everything they thought they knew. I want a DNA test, he said. I know. I want him to know who I am. I know that too. When she finally agreed to the paternity test, Clayton thought he'd won. But her next words changed everything. After we prove he's yours, I'm taking him and disappearing. You can have your son or your old life, Clayton, but you can't have both. Love doesn't stand a chance when lawyers get involved, unless the heart fights dirtier than the law. The DNA results came back on a Tuesday morning that felt like the end of the world and the beginning of everything. 99.7% probability of paternity. Numbers that turned suspicion into legal fact, that transformed Clayton Reed from ex-husband to father, that gave him rights he'd never known he wanted. By Wednesday, his legal team had descended on Glacier Point like a plague of expensive suits. Mr. Reed has grounds for full custody, his lead attorney announced in the conference room at the town's only law office. The mother concealed the child's existence for over 4 years. That's parental alienation, and the courts don't look kindly on it. Lana sat across the mahogany table with her own lawyer, Jim Morrison, a local guy who handled divorces and DUIs and looked completely out of his league facing down a team from New York's most prestigious law firm. But his eyes were sharp, and he knew Montana law better than these city sharks knew their own names. My client was protecting her child from a man who'd already proven he'd choose business over family, Jim said calmly. She had every reason to believe Mr. Reed would do the same thing to his son that he did to his wife. Have you ever been caught between loyalty to your current life and love for your past? What did you choose? Share your story in the comments. Clayton watched Lana across the table, saw the way her hands shook as she signed papers, the way she flinched every time his lawyers mentioned taking Miguel away. This wasn't what he wanted. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I need a minute with my client, he told his legal team. They filed out, leaving him alone with Lana and her lawyer. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Is this really what you want? Lana asked finally. To take him from the only father he's ever known? To drag him through courts and custody battles and make him choose sides? I want my son to know who I am, then be someone worth knowing. The words hit him like a physical blow, because she was right. What kind of father started his relationship with his child by traumatizing him? What kind of man used lawyers and legal threats to force his way into a little boy's life? What do you want, Lana? I want you to go back to New York and pretend we never happened. I want to raise my son in peace with the man who's been his father since he was 6 months old. I want to forget that you ever walked back into our lives. But that's not going to happen. No, she said quietly. It's not. The judge's ruling shocked everyone. Joint custody. But Miguel couldn't leave Montana without both parents' consent. Clayton would have alternating weekends, holidays, and summer vacation. Lana would retain primary custody. Congratulations, her lawyer whispered as they left the courthouse. You're both trapped here together. But Clayton was smiling. He'd never wanted to leave anyway. The real question now wasn't about custody schedules or legal rights. It was whether two people who destroyed each other once could figure out how to build something new from the wreckage. Starting with their son, who was waiting at home with Carlos, probably wondering why his whole world was about to change. When the court forces you to co-parent with the one person who can still make you lose control, every day becomes a battle between duty and desire. Clayton's rented cabin sat at the edge of town like a question mark, close enough for school pickups, but far enough that neighbors whispered about the rich man who'd rather live in their small world than return to his big one. The custody arrangement meant seeing Lana 3 times a week minimum. School events, doctor appointments, soccer practice. All the normal stuff that suddenly felt charged with electricity when you were doing it with someone you'd made love to 5 days ago. He's good with him, Carlos said one evening, watching through the window as Clayton taught Miguel to throw a baseball in the backyard. I hate that he's good with him. Lana stood beside her husband, the man who'd raised Miguel from baby bottles to bedtime stories. and felt her heart break a little more. Carlos didn't deserve this. He'd been nothing but faithful, loving, steady. Everything Clayton hadn't been. But watching Clayton catch Miguel when he stumbled, seeing that Reed smile light up her son's face, she couldn't deny the connection. Blood called to blood, apparently, even when you wished it wouldn't. "Mama, did you see? I almost caught it." Miguel ran inside, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Clayton says I have good hands. Just like him. Just like him." The words twisted in her chest. "That's great, baby. Go wash up for dinner." As Miguel thundered upstairs, Carlos reached for her hand. "We need to talk." She knew what was coming. "I've been dreading it for weeks." "I love that boy like my own son," Carlos said quietly. "You know that, right? Nothing changes that. But this us, I can't keep pretending I don't see the way you look at him." "Carlos, I see it, Lana. The way you watch him with Miguel. The way your whole body changes when he walks in a room. You're my wife, but you're not mine." "Not really. Maybe you never were. Have you ever been caught between duty and desire? Between the safe choice and the one that could destroy everything? Tell me in the comments how you'd handle this impossible situation." The conversation they should have had was interrupted by Miguel's scream from upstairs. They both ran, finding him on the bathroom floor, blood pouring from a gash on his forehead where he'd slipped and hit the sink. "Call 911, Lana shouted, pressing a towel to the wound. But Carlos was already on his radio, and somehow, she didn't remember calling him. Clayton was there too, kneeling beside his son, his face white with terror. "It's okay, buddy. You're going to be okay," he murmured, holding Miguel's hand while Lana applied pressure to stop the bleeding. At the hospital, they sat in the waiting room like some twisted version of a family. Lana between the two men who loved her, both of them focused on the child who connected them all. 6 stitches, the doctor announced. "He'll have a small scar, but kids heal fast." When Miguel finally came home, drowsy from pain medication, he wanted both his daddies to tuck him in. Carlos read the story, Clayton sang the lullaby, and Lana watched from the doorway, wondering how something so broken could feel so right. Later, after Carlos had gone to bed, she found Clayton on the porch. "Thank you," she said, "for being there today. He's my son too." The simple statement hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. Some people rebuild their lives with careful planning, others with desperate hope and stolen kisses in hardware store aisles. 3 months into their new normal, Clayton had transformed from weekend visitor to permanent fixture. The cabin rental became a house purchase. The temporary arrangement became something that looked suspiciously like forever. "I never thought I'd see the day," Old Pete muttered from behind the hardware store counter as Clayton loaded up on supplies for Miguel's new treehouse. City boy buying lumber like he knows what to do with it. YouTube University, Clayton admitted with a grin that would have shocked his former board of directors. "Miguel's the supervisor. I'm just a muscle." It was true. His son had appointed himself head of construction, complete with a tiny hard hat and serious opinions about where each board should go. Watching him work, tongue poking out in concentration, measuring twice like Clayton had taught him, felt like the best kind of magic. "Daddy Clayton, this one's crooked," Miguel announced from his perch on the ladder. "Daddy Clayton." The first time Miguel had called him that, Clayton had nearly fallen off the roof. Now it was as natural as breathing, as necessary as air. "You're right, boss. Let me fix that." From her kitchen window, Lana watched them work. 6 months ago, if someone had told her that Clayton Reed would be building tree houses and coaching Little League, she'd have laughed them out of the room. But there he was, patient as a saint while Miguel helped by handing him the wrong screws and asking a million questions. Carlos had moved out 2 weeks ago, not in anger, but with the quiet dignity of a man who knew when he'd been beaten by something bigger than himself. They'd sat at this same kitchen table where she'd fed Miguel breakfast every morning for 4 years, and he'd said the words that broke her heart and set her free at the same time. "I love you enough to let you go." What does it mean when someone loves you enough to let you be happy with someone else? Have you ever had to make that choice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The divorce papers were filed, but Carlos still came by to see Miguel, still took him fishing on weekends. In a perfect world, Miguel would have 3 parents instead of 2, and somehow, in their imperfect small-town way, that's exactly what they were building. "Mama," Miguel called from the tree. "Come see." She walked out to find Clayton waiting at the bottom of the ladder, hand extended to help her climb up. The treehouse was beautiful, professionally built, but with all the charm of a child's imagination. Windows in funny places, a slide instead of stairs, and a sign that read Fort Miguel in crooked letters. "It's perfect," she said and meant it. "Just like its architect," Clayton murmured, close enough that only she could hear. They were playing family, she realized. Playing house like kids do when they want to practice being grown-ups. But it didn't feel like pretending anymore. It felt like coming home. The call came while they were cleaning up tools, Miguel helping by putting everything in the wrong box. Lana's phone rang, and her face went white as she listened. "What is it?" Clayton asked. "Victoria," she said simply. "Your ex-wife is coming to Montana, and she's bringing lawyers. The past has a way of tracking you down just when you think you've outrun it. Especially when it's wearing designer heels and carrying a vendetta." Victoria Reed stepped out of her rental Mercedes like she was conquering territory, her New York elegance a sharp contrast to Montana's rugged beauty. But her eyes held the cold desperation of someone who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose but pride. She'd been beautiful once, the kind of beauty that graced magazine covers and charity galas. Now she looked polished but hollow, like expensive jewelry that had lost its shine. "Hello, Clayton," she said, adjusting her coat against the mountain wind. "Quite the little life you've built here." They stood in the parking lot of Miguel's school, other parents pretending not to stare while their phones came out to capture the drama. Small-town gossip was about to get a major upgrade. "Victoria, what do you want?" "Well, I've always wanted my husband back." The laugh that escaped him was harsh. "We've been divorced for 5 years. A mistake." "Well, I'm here to fix." She smiled, but didn't reach her eyes. "I've done some research on your situation. Living in sin with your baby mama while playing house with a child you abandoned? The courts won't look kindly on that kind of instability." Lana appeared at his elbow, Miguel's small hand in hers. She'd clearly been crying, probably from the phone call with Victoria's lawyer, but her chin was up, ready for battle. "You must be the other woman," Victoria said, looking Lana up and down like she was pricing livestock. "I can see the appeal. Very earthy. Have you ever had someone from your past try to sabotage your present happiness? How did you handle the drama? Tell me your story in the comments." "Mama, who's the mean lady?" Miguel whispered, pressing closer to Lana's leg. Victoria's eyes fixed on the boy like a hawk spotting prey. "So this is the little bastard causing all the trouble." The word hit the parking lot like a slap. Other parents gasped. Clayton stepped forward, his whole body radiating danger. "Choose your next words very carefully," he said quietly. "Oh, please, spare me the Protective Father Act. You didn't even know he existed until 6 months ago." Victoria's voice carried across the lot, making sure everyone heard. What kind of father abandons his child? What kind of woman hides a pregnancy to trap a man in a marriage? "I never trapped anyone," Lana said, her voice steady despite the tears. "I gave you exactly what you wanted, Clayton, without complications. And now you want him back? After he chose me and our son over everything else?" Victoria laughed, sharp as breaking glass. How pathetic. The crowd was gathering now, cell phones recording every word. By tonight, this would be all over social media. Small-town drama was about to go viral. "I'm filing for emergency custody," Victoria announced like she was reading from script. "This child belongs with stable parents in a proper home, not with some gold-digging EMT and a man having a midlife crisis." "You can't do that," Lana whispered. "You have no legal standing. I'm his stepmother, was his stepmother, and I have evidence that Clayton is mentally unstable, living in poverty by choice, abandoning his responsibilities." Victoria's smile was all teeth. "I also have photos of you two together, while you were still married to the sheriff's deputy. Adultery doesn't play well in custody hearings." The hearing's most damaging moment came when Victoria's lawyer asked Miguel who he wanted to live with. The 4-year-old looked confused, then pointed to Clayton and said, "I want to live with Daddy and Mama together." In that instant, everyone realized the real question wasn't about custody. It was about whether Clayton and Lana would finally stop running from what they both wanted. Justice isn't always found in law books. Sometimes it's discovered in the courage to tell the truth, even when it hurts. The courtroom packed with townspeople looked like a Norman Rockwell painting crossed with a legal thriller. Neighbors in flannel sitting behind mahogany rails, their presence speaking louder than any lawyer's argument. Judge Patricia Morrison, Jim's sister and a woman who'd raised 4 kids while building her law practice, looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. But her eyes were sharp as she studied the pile of papers, photos, and depositions that would decide Miguel's future. "This is highly irregular," she announced. "Ms. Reed, you have no biological connection to this child, no legal standing as stepmother since her divorce, and frankly, no business in my courtroom." Victoria's lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit, leaned forward. "Your Honor, my client is concerned about the welfare of a minor child being raised in an unstable environment by his biological parents." Judge Morrison's eyebrows went up. That seems like the most stable environment possible. The first witness was Dr. Ellen Martinez from the Children's Hospital in Billings. She'd been Miguel's pediatrician since birth, had watched him grow from colicky baby to confident little boy. "In my professional opinion, Miguel Rodriguez Reed is a happy, healthy child who shows no signs of emotional distress or neglect. His attachment to both biological parents is strong and appropriate. What's more important, perfection or growth? Legal rights or emotional bonds? Share what you think makes a real family in the comments below." Victoria's case fell apart piece by piece. Her claims of Clayton's mental instability were contradicted by his business success, his integration into the community, his obvious devotion to his son. Her accusations of Lana's unfitness crumbled under testimony from teachers, neighbors, and Miguel's own pediatrician. But the real turning point came when Lana took the stand. "I made mistakes," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the packed courtroom. "I should have told Clayton about the pregnancy. I should have fought harder for our marriage. But I was 24 years old, pregnant, and scared. I did what I thought was best for my child. And now," the judge asked, "now I see a man who chose to stay, who chose to build a life here, not because he had to, but because he wanted to, who gets up at 6 every morning to make Miguel pancakes, and drives him to school, and helps with homework, and reads bedtime stories. That's not the Clayton I married in New York. That's the man he became when he finally had something worth fighting for." The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of Miguel's crayons on paper. He sat in the front row, coloring a picture of a house with stick figures, 2 big ones and 1 small one, all holding hands. When Judge Morrison called for closing arguments, Victoria's lawyer stood up with nothing left to say. The evidence was overwhelming, the community support absolute, the child's welfare clearly protected. "Motion dismissed," Judge Morrison announced. "Emergency custody denied. This court finds no grounds for removing Miguel from his current living situation. Furthermore, I'm ordering Ms. Reed to pay court costs and attorney fees for this frivolous proceeding." As the judge confirmed Clayton's custody rights and dismissed Victoria's challenge, the courtroom erupted in applause. But the real victory came when Miguel ran to both his parents, wrapping his small arms around their legs. "Are we a real family now?" he asked. Clayton looked at Lana, the question hanging between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Some moments are so perfect they feel stolen from someone else's life, until you realize you've finally earned your own happy ending. The same lake where they'd ice skated as newlyweds stretched before them, frozen solid under starlight. But this time, Miguel skated between them, his laughter echoing across the ice as Clayton prepared to ask the question that would complete their circle. 3 weeks had passed since Victoria's humiliating defeat in court. She'd slunk back to New York with her tail between her legs, but not before the story hit the national news. Billionaire finds love in small town, read like a fairy tale, complete with photos of Clayton coaching Little League and Lana in her EMT uniform. But tonight wasn't about headlines or happy endings for other people. Tonight was about the three of them, alone on the ice where it all began. "Daddy Clayton, watch this," Miguel called out, attempting a spin that ended with him on his butt giggling. "Careful, buddy," Clayton called back, but his eyes were on Lana, skating gracefully beside him like she was dancing on ice. She'd been different since the trial. Lighter somehow, like she'd finally let herself believe that this could work, that they could be a real family instead of just playing house. "Remember the first time we came here?" he asked. "Our honeymoon. You were so determined to teach me to skate backward." She smiled at the memory. "I must have fallen 100 times, but you kept getting back up. Stubbornness runs in my family. Good thing. Our son's going to need it." The words hung between them, weighted with possibility. "Our son. Not my son or her son, but theirs together." Clayton reached into his pocket, fingers closing around the small velvet box he'd been carrying for 2 weeks. The ring inside wasn't like the massive diamond he'd given her the first time. That had been about showing off, proving his worth to the world. This one was different. A Montana sapphire the color of the lake at twilight, surrounded by diamonds that caught the light like stars. "Lana," he said, and something in his voice made her stop skating. Miguel sensed the change too, gliding over to stand beside them. "What's happening?" "I'm about to ask your mama a very important question," Clayton said, dropping to one knee on the ice. "If someone offered you a second chance at your greatest love, would you take it? What would your answer be? Share your thoughts on Second Chance Romance below. 5 years ago, I asked you to marry me because I couldn't imagine my life without you. Today, I'm asking again, but for different reasons." His voice carried across the frozen lake. "I'm asking because I love the woman you've become, because I love the mother you are, because I love the family we've built together." Miguel bounced on his skates. "Are you asking Mama to marry you?" "I am, buddy. What do you think?" "Yes, yes, yes," Miguel shouted, pumping his fists in the air. "That's his vote," Clayton said, looking up at Lana with everything he felt written on his face. "What's yours?" She looked down at him. This man who'd left her once and come back changed. This father who'd learned to love with his whole heart. This partner who'd chosen their small town life over his corporate empire. As she said yes, and he slipped a ring on her finger, Miguel jumped up and down on the ice shouting, "Mama's gonna marry Daddy!" But the sound of cracking ice beneath their feet reminded them that even the strongest foundations could be fragile. This time, though, they'd face whatever came together. Their first wedding was about proving love to the world. This one was about promising love to each other. The ceremony took place in their backyard. Mountain peaks standing witness as they exchanged vows written by their own hands, words that spoke of redemption, growth, and the kind of love that survives everything life can throw at it. Lana wore her grandmother's dress, simple ivory lace that made her look like she'd stepped out of a dream. Clayton wore his best suit, but he traded his corporate tie for one Miguel had picked out, bright blue with tiny dinosaurs that made their son giggle every time he looked at it. "Do you, Clayton, take Lana to be your wife, knowing that love isn't just a feeling but a choice you make every day?" "Ido. I choose her today, tomorrow, and every day after that." "Do you, Lana, take Clayton to be your husband, trusting that people can change, that second chances can lead to first loves?" "Ido. I choose to believe in us." The kiss that sealed their marriage was soft, full of promise, witnessed by a crowd of neighbors who'd watched their story unfold from scandal to redemption to love that looked like it might actually last this time. Miguel stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands, officially adopted by Clayton just that morning. The paperwork made it legal, but the love had been real from the moment a little boy asked if he was his real daddy. What does it mean when someone chooses you not once, but twice? When they prove love through actions, not just words. Share what commitment means to you. The reception was pure Montana. Barbecue and beer, a local band that played country music and 80s rock, dancing under string lights that turned their backyard into something magical. Carlos was there with his new girlfriend, laughing with Clayton about something Miguel had done in school. Victoria was notably absent, probably planning her next move from her Manhattan apartment. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the way Clayton looked at his wife. Not like a prize he'd won, but like a partner he'd chosen. What mattered was the way Lana's face lit up when he spun her around the dance floor, her wedding dress flowing like water. What mattered was Miguel running between the dancers, his bow tie crooked and his face sticky with cake, shouting, "My mama marry my daddy," to anyone who'd listen. Later, after the guests had gone home and Miguel was tucked in a bed, full of cake and excitement, Clayton and Lana stood in their bedroom. Their shared bedroom now, officially and forever. She came to him not as the desperate woman who'd once hidden her pregnancy, but as his equal partner, her confidence radiating as she slowly removed her wedding dress. "I'm yours," she whispered, "but more importantly, you're mine." Their lovemaking was celebration and promise, past and future, everything they'd lost and found again. He traced the curve of her spine, memorized the sound of her sighs, claimed her with touches that spoke of forever. As they danced to their first song as husband and wife, again, Miguel tugged on Clayton's tux. "Daddy, when do I get a baby, sister?" The question made them both laugh, but later that night, as they made love as a married couple, the possibility whispered between them like a promise. The greatest love stories aren't about finding your person. They're about choosing them again and again through every season of life. The doctor's office where it all began, where she'd once faced impossible choices alone, now held different news. This time, Clayton's hand covered hers as they heard their baby's heartbeat, and Miguel pressed his ear to her barely showing belly, whispering secrets to his future sibling. "Congratulations," Dr. Martinez said with a smile. "You're about 10 weeks along. Everything looks perfect. 10 weeks." Which meant their wedding night had been even more special than they'd thought. "Is it a boy or a girl?" Miguel asked, practically vibrating with excitement. "Too early to tell, buddy," Clayton said, but his voice was thick with emotion. This pregnancy was different, wanted, planned, celebrated. No fear, no secrets, no impossible choices. Just pure joy. He traced the subtle changes in her body with reverent fingers, each touch a prayer of gratitude. "You're creating our miracle," he whispered against her skin. This pregnancy was different, wanted, planned, celebrated. Every caress spoke of partnership, every kiss of forever. The business had grown beyond anything Clayton had imagined. Reed Sustainable Development had offices in Bozeman now, projects throughout the Northwest, but his heart remained in Glacier Point. They'd proven that you could build an empire without destroying communities, that success didn't have to come at the cost of your soul. Lana worked part-time now, training new EMTs while managing the foundation they'd started for rural healthcare access. Miguel thrived in kindergarten, already reading above grade level and asking questions that would make philosophy professors sweat. "Mama, will my baby sister like dinosaurs too?" he asked one evening as they walked through town, Lana's small bump just starting to show. "We don't know if it's a sister yet," she reminded him. "It is. I can tell." Miguel's confidence was absolute. "And she's going to be really smart like you and really good at building things like Daddy Clayton." So what would you do if life gave you a second chance at your greatest love? Would you be brave enough to take it? Would you choose growth over pride? Share your thoughts on what real love looks like below. They walked past the crash site sometimes, usually on their way to the lake. Clayton had put up a small memorial there, not for the accident, but for the second chance it had given them. A simple stone bench with an inscription. Sometimes the best things come from the worst moments. The town had embraced their story completely now. The billionaire who chose love over money. The single mother who got her fairy tale ending. The little boy who got his real daddy back. It was the kind of story people told their grandchildren, proof that happy endings were possible even after the worst mistakes. If this story of second chances and lasting love touched your heart, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories that prove love can conquer everything, even our own mistakes. Tell me in the comments which moment made you believe in their love again. And remember, the best love stories aren't about perfection. They're about two imperfect people choosing each other every single day. Family of 4, soon to be 5, stood on their front porch watching the Montana sunset paint the mountains gold. Miguel built snowmen, while his parents watched from the warmth of their home, knowing that sometimes the best things come to those who are brave enough to love again.